there guys, and welcome to another Factorio base tour video. I'm Xterminator, and thank you for joining me, and we just got an achievement as we started. And today we are going over a very interesting base. It's I would consider it a Megabase. It's kind of on the smaller side rather, of a Megabase, but what makes it so interesting is this is an entire low-tech burner inserter, burner miner, simpler one base, submitted by Heintje? Heintje, I think? I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. I hope I pronounced that somewhat correct. And so this is really interesting because you see those like burner challenge stuff, and this guy went over the top. They didn't just launch one rocket. They've launched 25 rockets, and they're doing like 150 science a minute, I believe. And they started with burner stuff and never went past it. So we're just going to start where he left us, right here, which looks to be kind of the beginning area. So, and luckily everything's radar, so we don't really have to move much. We have smelting here, pretty straightforward smelting setup, except that they are putting... okay, so this is actually extremely interesting. I was thinking, I'm like, why? I mean, there's coal here, but these are facing the wrong way. But what they're actually doing is taking splitters and having these burner inserters pull from it to feed fuel into the adjacent burner inserters. And then these ones, of course, since they're pulling from the belt anyway, can just take it. But what makes this so interesting is it's like, I mean, everything's a burner inserter, right? So you have to put fuel everywhere. Which presents a really interesting challenge. So this is what the smelters look like. Again, it's all like low-tech, level 1 belt, burner stuff. I mean, this is what the mining looks like. This is ridiculous. All burner miners. So this is actually pretty ingenious what they've done here is they have the burner miner offset from the belt here, and then using, of course, a burner inserter, as with everywhere else, and taking the fuel and putting it into the miner, and then it mines. And then, of course, the same thing here, except with coal. They're using, it looks like just 111 trains in the entirety of this map. Which makes sense. I mean, it's 100 and some odd science a minute. It's not like, thousands a minute or something. But this is like what the smelting looks like. They did set resources to be like super rich, super big, super frequent, just because there was enough of a challenge already. And biters are turned off. I can't imagine dealing with that with all of the challenge already presented here. Steel setup over here is pretty interesting. We have a brick setup too. Same type of deal. It's not actually direct insertion, but it's not like they're not using a iron plate smelter and then belting that somewhere else to steel. They are doing it right here. But it's kind of going onto a belt with fuel and then going into steel. You can see here where they've made the rocket silo, making some modules. Up here, green circuits, of course, all level 1 assemblers. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Try to get a good zoom level. I don't want to keep zooming in and out, but it's hard to find a good one. So wire, of course, into this. They're doing a 2-to-1 instead of a 3-to-2. And I think my guess would be they're actually calculating off of the assembler speed rather than base rate. Which works because everything is level 1 assemblers. So this looks like kind of just a make everything. So we have some signals, assemblers, of course, a ton of burner miners, modules, red circuits. So the red circuits are being fed by these green circuits here, which come in, be picked up through this. I like what they've done here with the spacing to get these undergrounds through. The wires coming through, of course, you need fuel on this belt. I'm not actually sure... Oh, very smart. Okay, so I was gonna say, I'm not sure how some of these are getting fuel, but these guys actually have inserters here inserting into the inserter, and then same here, inserting into the red circuit output inserter. Sulfuric acid running through here, bots. I mean, to make everything pretty straightforward. Oil isn't changed very much, except for the output of, the inserters doing it. They're using a lot of solid fuel and a lot of the base. So let's look at the actual science. So here's white, yellow. Here is labs, purple, black, blue. Where's green? I'm lost. I thought I found it before I started this. I don't know where green and red science are. But let's just take a look. So we have, well, I'd imagine it's over here. Okay, it's not labeled, but it's here. So again, smelting, pretty much the same exact setup. Coming down into gears, again, using this really smart splitter thing with the inserters coming off to insert into the inserters for fuel. And then we have quite a lot of inserter production and belt production. I mean, again, remember, these are all level 1 assemblies. These craft at half the speed of your character. So this is like super slow. You need a lot of stuff. Come through here, and pretty much it's the same principles used throughout. Where, you know, if you can't put fuel on the belt where an inserter is, and you're using an inserter from a different belt to fuel the other inserter. So you can see here, I mean, red and green is pretty simple. It only needs like 2 materials. Man, look at all this like burner miner smelting. I bet the pollution is like through the roof. I guess they turned off pollution. Interesting. Maybe for performance reasons? Because there's no biters. It's interesting that they would turn off pollution. So we have labs here, actually. So interesting. There's separate labs, additional labs. Oh. I see what they're doing. This is really cool. So what they're doing is they're using the labs as a pass-through, I believe. Yeah. So... okay, so I've never seen this before. So what they're doing is using the lab as basically a chest. So these inserters are pulling out from here. The train also contains solid fuel, of course, to fuel the inserters. It's sticking it into a lab, which are not powered. They're not actually doing anything. They're acting as a chest, like where you would use a car or something. And they're pulling out, and they're sticking onto this belt. Of course, with more fuel, which is really, really interesting. Actually, this is really cool. And then, of course, the lab setup, pretty nifty stuff here with these undergrounds. And they've had to be very clever with getting the fuel in, because you have to split fuel, half red, half fuel, half green, and then stick more fuel on the military science belt so these can get fuel. And then, of course, these are being fueled again by these extra inserters here. This is just, the amount of like design challenges this presents is so interesting. Yeah, so they're literally just using labs as chests, which is pretty, I've never seen that before. Come over here, we actually have science production. So blue science, red circuit production we've already seen, same with green. Engines, you know, just coming through, gears, iron. Luckily they don't have to put fuel here because they're able to do this, but they have fuel lines running through. They're using 11 or 12,000 coal a minute, which is not so... I mean, this takes so much fuel, guys. All these inserters, all these burner miners, this is pretty ridiculous. And then blue science, of course, they have solid fuel on the engine belt and on the red circuit belt, so all these things can get their materials. And then let's actually look at power while we're here. So this is, it looks like everything's on its own separate grid. This is actually struggling quite significantly, a bit it's underpowered, but tons of steel. So everything's made locally. This is kind of another modular base, it looks like, you know, because that was that power thing. But then if we look over here at like black science, I would imagine it has its own power potentially. Yeah, it has its own power right here. And then, of course, his own resources, own coal, stone. This is so much coal. You need it for the grenades, though. Comes through. So we have wall production here. Brick split half with coal, of course. Could have sworn I muted my Discord. Dang it. And then wall coming out with more fuel, of course. So military science, they have grenades, red ammo on one, and then they're, of course, putting coal in the wall belt so everything can get fueled. Red ammo being produced up here with copper in the coal coming through. Let's see, where was... So here's purple science. Okay, so the modules, they are able to just put the red and green circuits on one belt, luckily, and then they're actually using the output belt for the fuel and using the trick with the sideways inserters, basically. And they're actually using undergrounds here, which is really smart. And then these things come in. There's interestingly no buffer on the actual science input, which is probably fine. I mean, these inserters are pretty slow, but I guess once you get the full stack size, it's not too bad. It's like 3 or 4 items a swing. This is cranking stuff out. Oh my god, all the rail, dude. I had so much problems with rail on my vanilla base. Adding in fuel to this equation would make it so much more difficult, but they've managed. This is just really impressive. I mean, just so much belt. Look at all this belt. Or belt. Rail. There's a lot of belt, too. And then electric furnaces. Over here, some oil production, which again is pretty much unchanged. I do like that everything has a separate power grid, though. That's something you don't see in a lot of bases. I think that, let's look here at, only one we're missing is this monstrous white and yellow science. So, more mining, a massive, and why is this so big is because these things are so slow. You need like a bajillion of these making the parts. Solid fuel, I mean, solid fuel to rock fuel, this is super straightforward because this is actually probably the easiest build this person had to do because you're feeding solid fuel in for the actual ingredient, and your inserters can take that, and then your inserters can take the rocket fuel out that they're putting on the belt and fuel themselves with it, and it will last like forever. It's like a nuclear sub or something with a burner inserter. It'll last forever. So that's actually, this is probably was a really easy build to make. And then more smelting over here, tons of green circuit production coming through into a 4-way balancer to be split into red circuits. All this wire, I really like like the symmetry and stuff going on here. Coming through into red circuits, plastics actually being made in the middle of it, which is pretty interesting. All this is being belted up even farther into the modules, which are then being belted over to a freaking huge rocket control unit build. Of course, they did have to put fuel on these belts. Solar panels for the satellite. I'm looking for... Where are the blue circuits made? Here's yellow science. And yellow science is interesting. I mean, it takes 3 ingredients now instead of what it did before. So it's a bit easier to manage. But, okay, so here's the blue circuits. Pretty straightforward, actually. So they have the fuel on the advanced circuit belt rather than the other belts. The output belt does not have fuel, and neither does the green circuit input belt. Obviously, you wouldn't have room because these take so many circuits. It looks like they did use blue assemblers for this simply because of the fuel input. You have to use blue assemblers for that. Level 1s don't have, or liquid input, rather, not fuel. This looks like it's having... okay. I thought the sulfuric acid was the power bar. So this is surprisingly keeping up. Although this is not really very fast. I mean, it still takes more than 10 seconds on a blue assembler to make this. So this thing is actually able to keep up with the amount of circuits required. All of a one belt, so, which is pretty crazy. Here's the low density structures. Plastic and fuel, steel and fuel, and then fuel and copper. So they have to put fuel on 3 different belts. You can imagine the amount of friggin' fuel they have to make here. I think, yeah, I mean, you can just see it's like it's just all solid fuel for the most part. They are cracking some light oil into petroleum, but then just massive amounts of solid fuel being pumped out of here. A whole nother refinery here they've built onto a copper patch. Because why not? All these burner miners and stuff. And yeah, I mean, the reason you need these huge patches is because you have to route, you have to do belts and inserters and stuff, so you can really only use like about half the patch. So it's understandable to need that much. More green circuits. This looks like pretty much the same build we saw before down below. Coming in for the red circuits. another separate power grid over here. So all in all, I mean, that's 104. That's actually a pretty decent size, this one. It's like maybe using like a couple hundred megawatts worth of power in total throughout the whole base. This is so cool. I've never seen anything like this, to be honest. I've seen like some burner challenge bases, but nothing ever to this scale. Like, I've never seen anything to this scale. The only other thing I'm trying to find here is the actual rocket silo. Oh, well, it said white science, right? So it should be here. Okay, so solid fuel. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward because you have rocket fuel coming in anyway, so all your inserters can just fuel themselves for the most part. And then this one, how are they actually getting the other parts? Okay, so they're actually sharing, kind of. So they have this one stopped, so it doesn't proceed past this point with the filter splitter. For the rod control units, only these inserters put those in. And then I guess like these inserters only do rocket fuel, and then the low densities come in here. So this is just so cool, guys. I mean, if we look at all time, they've made over 100,000 science packs of most types, or of red, green. It's about 50, 60,000 of red, green, blue, purple, yellow in the time they've played, which is pretty impressive considering they're doing it like this. And if we just look here at, not that, we just, we look, so they've played for like 70-ish hours. So this is actually pretty impressive to get all this done in 70 hours. So there you go, guys. This is a really unique. See, this is what I love. This is what I like want for this series. Just these really crazy, unique things people do. They're just different than the standard, and this is just really neat. I would never do this. I would give up probably within like by the time I got to red or green science. This took some dedication or just somehow really enjoying doing this. Either way, it is super impressive. Thank you so much for submitting this. And I hope you guys enjoyed, found it interesting, maybe got some inspiration if you want to give this give this challenge a try yourself, perhaps. It would definitely give you a workout. Anyway, I think that's gonna do it, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to submit bases. I would love to see some more. If you have any thoughts or whatever, leave them down below. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.